Baissangour Baki Chamsoudinov is one of the most interesting prospects in MMA. At 21 years of age, with only 4 years of professional competition under his belt, Baki already shows a rare level of skill, coherence, and athleticism. Baki fights out of a wide-bladed stance and adopts the in-and-out bouncing typical of karate or taekwondo stylists. The bladed stance affords him quicker linear movement, allowing him to quickly blitz in and cover distance, while the bouncing hides his entries behind the rhythm of his footwork. The side-on stance also projects his lead shoulder, giving his jab a longer range than opponents in a more square stance. He likes to set up outside his opponent's jabbing range to deny their jab, covering the distance on his own initiative with bouncing jabs and blitzing right hands. To fighters used to more conventional opponents, the range Baki fights at can be confusing, as the lead hand is usually used to prod, hand fight, and jab in order to gather information about an opponent's distance and reactions. Fighters who stay outside of jabbing range and cover that distance in explosive bursts deny opponents the ability to gather and process that information. While he doesn't throw many long combinations, Baki has a few key mix-ups to keep his entries from getting too predictable. As opponents become conditioned by his long jab, he'll start pumping out foot feints and leap into a lead hook, sliding the hook behind their outstretched hand as they try to parry the jab. When Baki leaps in with a lead hook or a right hand, he likes to bring his foot on the same side with him to close all the way inside on his opponents. When they stand their ground, his long punch is turned into a clinch entry, and he'll often bump them off balance as he gets chest to chest, which allows him to punch in transition. If they flee instead, the stepping foot is right there to catch their leg and set up a sweep or a takedown. It seems like such a large committed motion should leave him open to counters, but stepping through off a rear hand is very difficult to counter, as all the space is eaten up while you're reacting to the punch. One of the benefits of the karate stance is that opponents are usually too far away to reach you with their first punch. They either need to explode forward, usually predictably if they aren't used to that distance, and risk getting countered, or they can telegraph their intentions by first punching the air in front of you. When Baki's opponents throw out lone jabs or right hands, he'll simply give ground and let them fall short. If they try to cover the distance with combinations, he'll plant and throw a quick right hand as a counter before immediately circling out or entering the clinch. Note how he steps his rear leg into a square stance with the punch, allowing him to circle out, clinch, or weave into a left hook. While Baki has a decent counter right, his preference for punching right into a clinch or circling off when pressed reveals a dislike of exchanges. As his reactive clinch entries are messier and less well practiced than his proactive clinch entries, there's an opportunity for opponents who can frame out of his clinch entries to walk forward with measured throwaway punches and force him into uncomfortable exchanges. The wide-bladed stance leaves Baki open to leg kicks, and that's where his opponents have had the most success against him on the feet. However, he's getting better at using his rhythmic bouncing to draw out the leg kicks and make opponents hesitate, and he'll also look to catch them and time a takedown. Though he's displayed competent distance striking, Baki's biggest strength is in the clinch. He favors a right underhook in head position, and if his opponent gets the underhook on his right side first, he'll look to body lock over top of it to nullify the underhook and allow him to maintain control on that right side. Once he has his control secured, he likes to angle slightly towards his right side underhook or body lock, which opens up his gorgeous inside foot sweep. He has a lovely dual threat with his foot sweep and body lock takedowns. If the opponent keeps a wide base to defend takedowns, the sweep is open. If they narrow their base to close off the foot sweep, he'll use his outside leg to block theirs while dumping them in the opposite direction. Baki will also use an outside foot sweep occasionally, mostly to time his opponent's knees. As their knee comes down, the weight naturally transfers to that leg and unweights the plant leg for a brief second, allowing Baki to sweep it out. The brilliance of foot sweeps is that when timed right, they give you the positional advantage of a double leg with none of the energy expended. He has also shown a good eye for using transitions between striking and grappling to his advantage, striking on clinch breaks and using the threat of takedowns and strikes to set up one another. A rare skill for someone so inexperienced. While Baki's takedown game has looked excellent against regional competition, he's struggled to connect his upper body clinch to his shot takedowns. As he begins fighting better competition against fighters who make fewer positioning mistakes in the clinch, his foot sweeps might be less reliable, and he may need to develop a better process for hitting double legs on the cage. Baki's top game has a solid foundation to build on, but right now it's lacking coherence and needs some improvements to take it to the next level. He's pretty aimless when in his opponent's guard, lacking a clear series of favored subpositions he's working toward, or a process to get him there. He's content to have his arms overhooked on the mat, and often struggles to posture up, limiting his damage output and preventing him from achieving a more dominant position. He does throw some nice body-head combinations on the ground, but he rarely uses them to achieve better positions. If he would use his body-head combinations to force his opponents to block and open an elbow in order to swim his arms inside, it would consistently put him in better positions to deal damage and pass guard. Once past the guard, Baki looks to pass high to his opponent's upper body and secure a mounted crucifix. He has a decent pinning game from side control, and actively switches his hips to remove opponents' frames and secure his position. But he is a bit too married to the idea of pinning, which leaves him prone to getting bucked off. Elite grapplers will often not directly resist every escape attempt with opposing force, but rather allow opponents to move underneath them and use that movement to funnel them into even worse positions or to deal damage. One of the things separating the elite from the good is knowing when it makes sense to stabilize the position and when it's optimal to allow movement. That comfort and sense isn't quite there yet for Baki. When he has his opponent mounted, Baki is a much more active ground striker with powerful elbows, but he's similarly prone to being bucked off in mount, as he's often slow to react to shifts in his opponent's weight, especially when they're near the cage and can push off of it to add momentum. If opponents are able to belly down and work into a turtle position, Baki loses a lot of his positional control as he's not adept at riding. In order to keep an opponent on the mat as they work back to their feet from a turtle position, you need to force their weight over their hands, or take the limbs they're posting on out of play. Baki tends to wrap the far side hip and hit with his near side hand. With no limbs controlled and his weight distributed away from their hands, his opponents are free to stand up. Proficient riders will immediately look to snatch up a limb so the opponent can't use it to bear weight, controlling hands with inside wrist control or a cross wrist grip, or using their lower body to isolate and put weight on the opponent's legs so they can't start building their base. These tactics stop the first move the opponent needs to make in order to stand up, locking down the position before escape is imminent. I think developing these first move stoppers would be the best addition to Baki's top game, as it would allow him to maximize his control time and damage on the mat, while also giving him more confidence and allowing opponents to move underneath him. Right now, he often gets bucked trying to pin in suboptimal positions, as opponents are likely to get back to their feet if they can turn belly down. But with an improved riding game, he may not feel as much pressure to pin, and could instead use their movement to funnel them into a top ride, where he can then begin to tie up limbs and deal damage. Baki is currently training at the MMA Factory in Paris under Fernand Lopez. That gym has a poor track record of producing fighters who are prepared for elite competition, and none of their talent has displayed the kind of wrestling and riding skills that would take Baki's top game to the next level. While he may have the talent and athleticism to develop into a top 15 welterweight anyway, a move to a more proven gym may be necessary to maximize Baki's elite potential.